February 16, 2022 CAB meeting. We'll just start really quickly with a review of the minutes and any comments. If everyone got a chance to review the packet, and were there any comments on the minutes from the January 19th meeting? Any additions, revisions? Nope, hearing none. I would ask, and actually before we do that, I want to make sure that our note taker realizes they're the note taker. Amanda, can you?
Yeah, I'm busily taking notes already.
Okay, thanks, Warren. Appreciate it. All right, so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the January 19th meeting.
So moved.
Awesome.
I second.
A second, and all in favor? Raise your
Aye.
hand, say aye. Okay,
Aye.
great. All right, the minutes are approved. And with that, we have some visitors, or at least one visitor, I see.
Yeah, I have to say that Charlie is having his hip replaced. So I'm
Oh, wow.
doing my best here.
He can be
Kevin, what,
excused.
Dean?
Yeah, he has surgery. I think it's scheduled today.
Oh,
Okay,
goodness.
well, yeah, no, he
Or
definitely-
it may be a pre-op, investigatory thing where they take measurements and do other things, because obviously a hip replacement's a big thing, but he's
right.
definitely over at Emerson today.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, yeah, we'll excuse him, but we thank you,
Yeah.
Dean,
We
for.
wish him well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We thank you, Dean, for coming along. We
Well,
understand.
thank you for
that-
having me.
Yeah.
Let me just introduce
my.
myself so that
That'd be
everybody's
great.
clear. Dean Banfield, 73 Walden Terrace. I'm not a member of the committee, and I'm supposed to say those things. I also have a disclaimer. I'm on the finance committee, and I'm bringing this article, with some help from Charlie. The two of us are co-conspirators here, but this is not a function of the finance committee. It has nothing to do with anything the finance committee does. I just need to say that as a disclaimer. So
Yeah, perfect.
Yep. Okay. So would you like me to just dive in, or how would you like me to proceed? I have a presentation. If I can share my screen, I can do that.
That would be fabulous. Go for it.
Okay. All right. I will go into screen sharing mode. Where's my cursor? Can't find my cursor.
And while he's sharing, Dean and Charlie, and I think through Jake, all got us connected, and we thought it was a great thing to bring to the CAB to hear what they're planning to put on the warrant. So.
Okay. So here's can you see my first slide, just so I'm clear? I'm operating in two screens. I can still see all of you, but my slide's up. So hopefully.
Yep, we can see
good.
it. We can see it.
So I'm not going to dwell on the formal text, but there's two objectives that this thing is really out to do. And that is to sort of reinvigorate CMLP and the creation of solar assets within the community. That's the primary goal of the thing, is to get that restarted. And the second piece of the puzzle is we don't want to go into this sort of haphazardly. We don't want to just say, oh, here's a project, let's just do this project, and we're on our way. We would like to see a more rigorous planning process, and that plan, a schedule for how we're going to get to where we hope to get, and have that presented by the end of the year so that we can then start in earnest to achieve some of the targets that are in the climate action plan. So that's the goal here. So where are we now? We got started in 2010. We did a little array at Willard School. That might have been actually in 2009. There was a grant available at the state level for this sort of thing. We took advantage of it and put a small array up. I want to read something that was part of when the grant gets closed out, you have to have some descriptive stuff. So the town of Concord said, it provided an opportunity for the municipal light plant and the school department to gain experience overseeing the contractual arrangements, installation, and ongoing operation of the system. Further, the system provides an opportunity for other town building managers, as well as school administrators and facilities directors from other communities to get a firsthand look at the technology and to hear about the town's experience with it. So that was part of the grant, write-up. Since Willard was done, there have been 0 additional school buildings solarized. So we have no other solar panels on the schools. So that other towns have gone crazy. There are canopies at LS, there are canopies at Wayland High School. There's solar on top of Lexington High School, and AB has all kinds of solar. There's a lot of solar, but not so much in Concord on our municipal stuff. But then we went ahead and started to do it really at a more utility level with the landfill and with Grace. But then in late 2017, the light plant adopted a go-forward strategy, which was an 8-year strategy paper, and basically wrote off doing any more solar from the perspective of the light plant. Yeah, people could put it on their rooftops, fine. We might even encourage that. We'll try to help them find grant money or any kind of underwriting, but no more has been done since. And the Climate Action Plan kind of revisited the solar targets that were established in 2010 of 25 megawatts by 2030, has dialed it back to 20, but you can see in the Climate Action Plan, the highlighted blue says we're at 7.57 megawatts, and we want to get to 20 megawatts by 2030, and we haven't done anything since 2017. So we got to get moving. That's really the point. And we have to sort of encourage the light plant to start. If we're going to hit that target, it's going to mean 1.5 to 2 megawatts of solar deployments per year if we're going to hit that target. So that's a pretty healthy amount. And we're looking at CMS as the next thing, and that's going to open in 2025. And that's like 1.2 megawatts tops. So it's really a smallish piece of the 12.5 that we need to get. And by 2025, we're going to now have 5 years left. So we got to get going on this is the point. And the question is this important to the town? This slide pretty much says it all. We can create a green energy supply, and we don't have to put one more solar panel in the town. We can buy RECs. We can, contract with wind offshore. There's a lot of things that we can do to have a non-emitting energy supply. But what that does is it says, well, others are going to take on the responsibility of building it out. They're going to build out the infrastructure to get it to us. If it means transmission lines across Maine, who cares? We'll just buy the energy from some mountainside in Maine. That's fine. We'll take that. So the question is that equitable? Is it the right thing for us to be doing? And are we doing our share? When Article 51 passed in 2017, we were aligning ourselves with Massachusetts targets for 2030, I think. And since that alignment, the Massachusetts targets have not stabilized. They are getting more aggressive, but we haven't done anything. And we continue to do nothing since 2017 on solar. Climate, Charlie Baker signed an article that indicates we should be adding 3% renewables per year. Now that from a regulatory perspective, that hits people like National Grid. Any investor-owned utilities have to sort of start building a lot of renewables or creating renewables. Municipal light plants are exempt. There's also, Massachusetts is leading the country in something called a clean peak standard. So as we're peaking our energy demands in the New England grid, we're bringing online the most marginal resources and usually the most polluting. And Massachusetts is trying to find a way to force those resources to become green resources, not the most polluting. And we have something called a clean peak standard, another piece of legislation or regulatory framework that's been added since we joined with Massachusetts in 2017 through Article 51. So municipal light plants are generally exempted from all this stuff, but we think we ought to be doing our share. So what are the challenges and why haven't we been pursuing solar? Do the financials work? Well, you can't know unless you look. And I don't know that we've done a lot of looking. They seem to work when we were doing PPAs, power purchase agreements with Kearsarge to do the landfill and WR Grace. We're just buying kilowatts from them, and they're taking on all the responsibility. But as a nonprofit municipal light plant, we can't take advantage of any tax advantages to doing solar. We can't take advantage of any regulatory frameworks that have been set up for the investor-owned utilities to encourage them to do solar. So we're kind of on our own and do the financials work, but if we don't look, we won't know. So the other question is solar peak production a serious issue, and how do we address it? There are, the buzzword is that solar saturation, especially in months like May or maybe April, when air conditioners aren't going crazy, people don't have to heat quite so much, electricity demand is very low, and the sun is shining quite brightly, could be at the point where our distribution network within Concord takes on more solar than we can eat, and that would destabilize our grid. And that's not great. So we have to figure out a way through that rather than just say, well, we can't put any more solar. Let's study it and sort it out and try to find a way to get through that. And then we'll find answers. And that's what the planning process that we're hoping to engage in between now and the end of this year would arrive at, is a solution to some of these problems. Will the finances work? Are the problems solvable? But we think there are benefits. Putting it in our backyard is a fair way of doing things. We are doing our share. If renewables need to go in, wind is not an option, really. We're not going to create a lot of hydro here in Concord. This is really the main thing that we can do within the community, is to add solar to our portfolio. Local renewables will reduce the amount of energy we have to pull from the grid. It reduces our capacity and transmission charges. It has extended benefits if we pair it with batteries. And in the long term, we know what it costs. So if you deploy some solar, you have a stable cost structure for the energy that it will deliver for the long term. You're not going to be racked by all kinds of ups and downs in the market, because you know what you put in, you know the amount of capital you had to invest, and the numbers just run right out till it's no longer useful. So that's good. So why do it now? Well, the reason we got to do it now mostly is because we got to do it now. We got to work harder than we're working. That's that simple. The urgency is serious. So the Commonwealth needs us to participate, even if we are not, from a regulatory perspective, forced to participate. We need to up the ante on renewables within the Commonwealth. And the financial opportunities are real, because at the peak, the energy is the most expensive that we purchase. Our top 1% of peak demand hours represent about 8% of electricity costs, and the top 10% of the energy we purchase at the peak is about 40% of our electricity costs. So pulling that peak back is a serious financial benefit. And if we can find a way to marry this to a battery solution, that will have ripple effects. So it's really good, and it avoids infrastructure. And so what will it mean? It'll mean adding about up to 10% to our power portfolio if we can meet our 20 megawatt goal. Okay, that's a good thing. And it will mean that it's right here in our backyard. We won't have to pull it across the grid. We might not have to upgrade our substation as soon. And there's a lot of potential. There are numerous sites in the community that have potential. We do have to find another utility scale site if we're going to meet this target. 2229 Main Street has been talked about as a possible site, but we are going to have to find another expended utility site. And the point here really is we have to get going now if we're going to try and get to that target of 20 megawatts by 2030. So thank you. There's the article again. This is the style of a hearing or a town meeting warrant article presentation. So it got the thing at the end. So
Great.
if you got any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dean. I appreciate that. What questions do we have for Dean?
Wow. That
Well, I have a
Malcolm
question.
dead.
You wowed us all.
I have a
Brian's got his hand
question.
up.
I have a question. Chair,
Yeah,
can
go
I
for
ask
it,
my
Michael.
question?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so I have a couple of comments, and maybe there's a question in there somewhere. Dean,
Unshare.
first of all, it's such a sensible article, right? I mean, from all the different vectors, whether it's the goal that was set with CAB, whether it's been the Article 51, all the direction points into what you're posing here as clearly the benefit and the next step forward. And as you say, we need to do very, very quickly. What I'm wondering about is in the development of this conversation, has there been any reach out to the leadership at Municipal Light Plant to bring them under the tent? Or is this, have you concluded that we don't have a willing partner and therefore an article, which we have found articles are great ways to move the needle, right? And bylaws and ordinances, rather than urging or suggesting or give it some careful thought. But it's always better to have a willing partner in something as large as this, because it's complicated, as I'm sure you well know.
Yes.
So have we given
speak-
the
Yeah, let me
leadership
speak
an
to that if I
opportunity?
could. I reached out to the light board and to the chair, to Wendy and Ravelli. And Wendy has looked at the disconnect between the strategic plan that the municipal light plan is working on and the climate action plan, which says we need to develop this 20 megawatts by 2030. And she, at the last light board meeting, indicated that at her next light board meeting, she is going to revisit their strategic plan. So I've tried to do what I can from a committee level. I did not go directly to Dave Wood or the light plant and say, hey, why aren't you guys doing this? Because all they would do is push back and go, well, we have a strategic plan and we're working it. We have to have it navigated. And I think Wendy's doing the right set of things. She's bringing it and putting it on her agenda to review their strategic plan, I think with the opportunity to add this 20 megawatts back in, where it sort of got dropped out after we got rolling on it. In 2010, there was a paper put out by the light plant that said we should put 25 megawatts in by 2030. That's been scaled back to 20 in the climate action plan. But that 2010 paper has pretty much been put to the side, and it has been explained as being superseded by this 8-year strategic plan that they've been working on, that they've been working at since 2017. Now that's a live document. That document has been revised 4 times since it was originally published in late 2017. So they constantly review it and go back to it. And, Wendy Ravelli's agreed to have another look, and hopefully they'll add this to it. And by the time we end up at town meeting, they'll say, well, we've added it back in, we're on board. But I'm working it. I'm doing the best I can.
John, question?
Well, I think Dean answered my question about why. So, and I see Brian has his hands up, so maybe he's going to say something.
Okay.
So,
I think any other CAD members?
Yeah,
have a
let the CAB
question?
members talk first.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, what's the price of solar versus, buying electricity from outside?
Well, the best information we get is from an organization called NREL, National Renewable Energy. I don't know what it stands for. I'm sorry, but their numbers indicate that I believe that solar is somewhere in the vicinity of $200 a kilowatt. I have to go look at the numbers, but when you buy it from the outside, you contract for it, per kilowatt. And I think the generation numbers have to be put together. This is what I said about the financials need to be worked. And I don't think anybody's really worked them that carefully. So I might be able to tell you what it costs to literally build arrays, but you have to then map to that the cost of money, the underwriting of some bond issuance or something to pay for the installation of a large array, et cetera. So have I worked all those numbers out? No, but that's what the slide indicates, is that these are one of the breaks that keeps us from doing it, is because we really haven't done this analysis for a while, and it needs to be done. So
I found that's amazing. I mean, you'd think they would have worked out the cost for the array at the landfill, et cetera. you know.
Well,
what it
that's
costs
a
per
different-
kilowatt hour.
That's in a different era, to be quite frank. That era was an era in which there was an SREC carve out. So you could strip SRECs from the and sell those as a separate entity. And then the contract with Concord was literally just to buy the energy. And this SRECs were stripped. So Kearsarge, the people who are providing the power purchase agreement, they're just literally selling us kilowatts. And the kilowatts do not include the renewable energy certificate that came with them when they were generated. So Kearsarge turns around and then sells that in the SREC market, and we have to go and buy them back from the SREC market, from the free market, so that we can marry them and say that we really have clean energy. So that's an issue with that particular set of contracts. Both the landfill and Grace are under the same arrangement. And in those cases, Concord didn't put in a penny. They literally just, contracted out and agreed to purchase all the kilowatts that these two entities would generate for the life of the contract.
What do
So
they charge us for those kilowatts?
I don't know the answer to that
Kilowatt
question.
hours.
Brian might know. He's on the light board, so he might.
They must know, I mean,
actually
someone must know that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay,
but-
thank you.
but We get
So
charged.
I know that number and I can't divulge it.
Oh,
Really?
That's- Okay.
All I can say is that it's higher than the average cost of generation.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway.
the light plant keeps pricing of kilowatts and their contracted prices confidential because they go out into the market and request power. And if they knew what they got in the last deal, they would game the system against Concord.
Wow.
Okay.
I don't know. You can look at the DPU documents and work it out backwards with the math, but Yeah.
Jake, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just going to build on some of the other comments that have been brought up. I think first off, we've talked as a group that one of the roles that we can play as CAB is, making sure that different entities across town are following through and taking action to try and reach the goals that we've established in the climate action plan. And so I think this is another way to reinforce that and get a better understanding of how the light plant is planning to move forward. I've heard about the strategic plan as well for almost a number of years now, and I haven't seen the latest version. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's even publicly available at this point, but
it is
that's
and
all.
it's the same.
I'm sorry,
It
Brian,
is.
what was that?
So the strategic plan is the same as it was written in 2017. There are some Gantt charts about progress updates that change every couple of years, but not a lot of information. But it is available on the CMO.
Okay, yeah, so I've seen that 2017 plan, but I haven't seen anything else. Thanks for clarifying that. So I think that has been a concern of mine, and broadly, I think the CAB has said that we are looking to get more detailed updates on this. And I would agree, from the cost perspective, I think there are some challenges from my understanding, and Brian may be able to enlighten us more, but my understanding is, like, from a commercial perspective, if you're an investor-owned utility or you're a developer out, Massachusetts is a great place to put in solar, and it makes a lot of sense financially in many cases, depending on, where you're looking to install it and various other things. But I think the challenge for the light plan is, how do you install solar? How do you develop a model to install the solar in a cost-effective way where we can also keep those RECs and get credit for those for the town? Because ultimately, I think just hosting these systems isn't going to get us towards our climate action plan goals, and is not going to drive the local benefit. So I think we need to be developing solar where we can retain ownership of those RECs wherever possible. And I think that has some complexities that need to be worked through. So anyway.
Just as a comment about that, as I said before, the energy we get from Kearsarge for the landfill and WR Grace comes without RECs. So to green up those resources, we have to go to the market and buy the RECs back just so that we can then retire them. So we're paying and then paying to get that energy straightened out.
I want to just clarify exactly what the light plant's doing with Rex and Kearsarge. So Kearsarge owns the SRECs. They sell those into the market. They're valued around $300. But the light plant is buying mass class 1 RECs, which is after the opt-in term on any solar array, it defaults to class 1 Massachusetts renewable credits, which are trading around $40. So Kearsarge is per megawatt hour is walking away with what, 260 per megawatt on the transaction of RECs. So there is a financial benefit for us to structure it that way.
Okay.
Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Brian. Thank you. I think, John, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, maybe it's more philosophical perspective, but I mean, in the end, as we've talked about, what we really care about is how much our emissions are to the atmosphere, right? Personally, I don't care that much about the Concord footprint as long as emissions to the atmosphere are reducing. So if the town were to enter into more PPAs and had to sell off the RECs to make those deals work, I think that's still a benefit. It just doesn't show up in our local footprint. So, if that's what's keeping the light plant from going ahead with those kinds of deals, I think we should think about our accounting system and whether it becomes an impediment to actually reducing emissions to the atmosphere.
That's a good point. Good point. Michael, I think you had another comment. Oh, I think you're still on mute. There you go.
When I read the language, it sounds like the intent of the article is not to instruct leadership at CMLP exactly how to go and get 20 megawatts, right? It
That's
seems
correct.
that what we're trying to suggest, gently, nudgingly, is that a plan be developed. How might we go and secure that 20 megawatts, right? It's
Yes.
a belief that within the strategic plan, I've read through it. It's an awfully complicated and a very long document, and you really have to focus in to try to get at the gist of all of the different things. But it doesn't lay out a plan, right? And I think the intent of this article is not necessarily to find fault with leadership or to say that leadership has erred in the gap, but that it doesn't appear that there is a pathway, a roadway, a roadmap on how to do that. And
Yes.
I think at the CAB we struggle because a good number of the blueprints are deemed the action items that have come out of the plan, right? You take all the 180 pages and you distill it down and say, okay, so what are our priorities and what are we going to do? Who's responsible for delivering on them and what kind of schedule is it? Essentially, it goes to the next step of an operations plan.
Yep.
And that planning at the CMLP seems to be systemic in that whether we're talking about vehicle to grid, in this case, we're talking about solar. We've already hosted and have CMLP responsible for developing a plan around electrification and and real-time pricing. So we've got a whole host of things, right, that are part of a plan. And the plan doesn't seem to be executed, at least to give us confidence that we have that roadmap. I would just go back to my former comment, which is maybe there's a way to expedite getting a plan is if we can understand maybe where leadership at CMLP is in not having a plan. Or do they think we have a plan? and we don't. Sort of more of an engagement. We might conclude that we don't have a willing partner and therefore we need an article, and the words are urge, but maybe it's require a plan. I don't know. But
Well, I don't think
it's more.
the town meeting doesn't have authority to tell CMLP to do X. So it can only urge them to do X.
Right.
I don't, if it was require, then that would not hold water in a legal sense. We're just saying this is the sense of the town meeting that something's got to happen. And it should bear some, weight. The town meeting weighs in, and then CMLP just sloughs it off and says, well, we were urged, but so what? I mean, I think that they will be responsive if the town meeting weighs in. I think that there's something will happen.
Yeah. So it's asking for a plan, and its fundamental request is.
And if I could respond to that for just a second, the 5 years in which nothing has happened, nothing would happen if we were not constructing a new middle school and the town kind of rose up and said, we want this thing to be net zero. Otherwise, CMLP would just be coasting. They would not be addressing this at all. But the town came out when the articles came forward to build that school and added it will be net zero ready. And the expectation would be that the building would fundamentally be a net zero building. And so to do that, CMLP is kind of backed into, okay, we better start doing some design work for something that's going to go up in 2025. So we'll work on that. It was not part of some overarching, how do we get to 20 megawatts? It was just, the town's pretty much insisting that something happened here. And it's not part of a larger plan. So that's why this article is saying we need to get to 20 megawatts. And what's the pathway? What's the roadmap to that? And so that's kind of what we're pushing for. Yeah.
And the way I understand it is it's still not a given that we're headed, that we're putting solar into that CMS project. It's being looked at, but it wasn't part of the approved project.
Well, the project itself said our goal is to be solar ready and to be all electric so that the capacity to be a net zero building is possible. So that's the project plan, and the project managers for that, or they've sort of carved off, okay, we're doing everything we do. The roof's going to be ready. We'll try to put the air handling units in places that don't completely impact all the solar panels we want to put up there. In other words, going to do what they can do. And they're going to put some conduit in the, under the driveways so that if we want to put canopies or whatever, there'll be conduit available. So it's going to be ready to plug in.
Right.
So,
Correct.
yeah.
Just a quick comment.
Brian.
I'm not speaking for the board, but discussions at the board have focused around how do we execute, not should we or shouldn't we, on solar at the middle school. So though I can't speak definitively, I strongly believe that the board will make sure it happens. Okay.
And you had another question or comment, Brian?
I did, but Jerry's on the, is it just down, as all the members had their questions?
I believe so. I see no more hands, so.
Okay.
Jerry's hand is still up, but it was.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Brian. I can go after you.
Okay, thanks. So Dean, I'm amazed at your ability to get up to speed on solar for the last decade in Concord. Great detail. The main barrier is that when W.R. Grace was built, after the landfill was built, all the slack in the duct curve was taken up by that array. And so Fenn School looked at putting on 150 kilowatts. And they were told by the light plant that they needed to pay for storage, energy storage as well, in order to put on that scale of a system. They did work with them and give them options, but ultimately it didn't happen. It's because if you're a commercial entity right now, you have to build solar and storage.
Right.
Residents haven't hit that yet because we're not that saturated. But it's really the utility took up the majority of the solar production space in town behind the substation. So your article, it really should speak to the need for energy storage, because that is the financial barrier for more utility or large scale systems in town, is the need for that.
It does tangentially, Brian. At least on one of these slides, I say that there are enhanced benefits with battery storage, that the benefits are enhanced.
Right.
So on the challenges slide, I say, okay, solar peak production, solar saturation, these are real challenges that need to be addressed. Okay. And on the benefits side, I then say, yeah, this is a synergistic play with batteries. So, the goals that are already in the climate action plan for, I don't think it's 80 megawatts of battery storage, are completely synergistic with this. And so there you go. I think it's kind of a given that that managing that duck curve is, there are a lot of ways to manage duck curve, but I will say that storage is probably the simplest drop kick for how to get it done. There are all kinds of other solutions, managing people's water heaters, there's all kinds of other things you can do, but that's a simple.
So a curtailment might be the easiest.
Well,
strategy.
there's obviously that, like if we're paying for kilowatts that are being generated at Grace, and all of a sudden in April, it's a tough month, we could curtail them and pay for them anyway. There's different things you can do. You could put it on the BD, and 99% of the time, the BD will eat every kilowatt that could be generated there. There might be a few random moments when it's not. So curtail those few, and it probably would not be a big loss. I mean, that's a solution. It's certainly a solution.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. And Jerry, wanted to make sure you get your
Thanks.
question.
Jerry Frankel, 132 Jenny Dugan Road, Chair of CSEC. I wanted to comment, add a couple more comments on some items that Dean mentioned, but there wasn't all that much discussion of. First, on the financial side, having arrays in town that generate power for us and here in Concord is an environmental justice issue. And the reason that's the case is if we don't have them, we're basically asking other communities to generate power that we will use. And as we know, most of those generation facilities, or at least many of them, are in underprivileged areas, environmental justice areas. And I think it's important that here in town that we recognize that and we do our part. And doing our part means we've got to generate more of the energy we use. And I see this article as a step directly in that direction. The second comment pertains to finances and costs. So independent of whatever it might cost us to get energy from a solar array we might put up at CMS or anywhere else, if we do a PPA, generally we're going to have a fixed cost. There may be some accelerators on that, or some added fees as we go forward, but we'd understand that contractually. If we own the arrays ourselves, which of course there's financing issues in how we would pay for that, but if we did, we're getting the energy at the lowest possible cost. But in addition to that, that cost is stable. That's not going to vary much at all. And in case that you don't realize how significant that is, take a look at your electric bill this month compared to last month, and check next month's as well. Because with natural gas prices right now, which have gone through the roof overseas and have increased here, this is affecting people's pocketbooks right now. And so having our own generation helps insure us against these market shocks. And in the UK, it is a shock. And geopolitically, it's likely that these prices are going to vary quite a bit. And when they vary, they're unlikely to go down a whole lot. They're mostly going to go up. So I think from a ratepayer's perspective, this is an important attribute to recognize. Thank you.
Great.
Jerry.
Good, both good comments. Well, thank you very much, Dean, for coming
I
in.
feel like I've overstayed
Great.
my welcome. You slotted me in for 15 minutes, so I.
That's okay. That's okay. We can salvage. It's not a problem, but I think it was good conversation. And a good overview. And you know, one of the things we'll be talking about a little bit later tonight, although maybe not as in depth on this as we have on this one, is kind of the whole, you know, suite of warrant articles, and you know which ones CAB wants to make sure that we're providing, you know, appropriate support to, what that support might look like. And so I think this has given us a really good overview of this one, and appreciate that. So appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. And I certainly will put in my plug for, we would certainly hope for your recommendation of affirmative action on this thing. So that's the
Great.
best I can do.
Yeah,
is
no,
ask for
thanks.
that.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, we'll move.
And with that, I'm going to say so long, if that's
And
okay.
that's fine. Yep, that's
Okay.
fine. We slotted you first so that you could do that.
Thank
So,
you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
all right, I am going to share my screen. I did get the agenda to come up. Let's see. Can you see it?
Yes.
Are you seeing the agenda? I have lots of screens open, so make sure you're seeing the agenda. Great. All right. Well, with that, we'll we'll kind of adjust. So pay no attention to the times on the side. But we'll go now to my update. Just a quick update for me. I attended my first town chairs breakfast this morning, and one thing that I wanted to highlight. There were lots of good information, but one thing that caught my attention was I believe it's the Transportation Advisory Committee. I think that's what its official name is. And I don't, Nick, I believe it's Nick Pappas, is the chair. He mentioned that they are putting together a roadmap, which sort of piqued my interest. A roadmap for addressing transportation. And in particular, he was mentioning that, as he sees it now at the state level, they're really focused more on non-vehicle transportation modes. And he didn't really go into many details, but I did wonder if that might be a committee for us to reach out to hear more about what they're planning, what they're thinking about related to the roadmap. There was, I think it did mention MBTA, and in fact, someone asked a question about that in particular. And, are we going to get more trains more frequently in Concord? And no one answered. But, so anyway, I just think it might be something that, it doesn't necessarily mean we do it immediately, but maybe over the next few months, we look to bring him or others of that committee in to discuss, synergies between Climate Action Plan and this roadmap that they're developing, because I would imagine there could be a lot. So if CAB is in agreement with that, I will reach out and see when we might be able to bring them in. Any comment on that, I guess, before I give the floor over to Amanda? All right. Hearing none, then.
Well, this is Warren. I
Yeah.
think that's a good idea to have them come in.
Okay, great. So I will pursue it. I assumed the silence meant you were all in agreement. So thank you for the affirmative. I appreciate that.
Courtney, I have a question.
Yeah.
In the Transportation Committee, did they talk about the expansion of charging stations that are going to be included? I understand that right out there, they're going to be putting in a tier 3 supercharger, I gather.
Okay.
High speed.
Okay.
But was there any intention there that we're coordinating charging stations along with, proposing to get more people and incentives for electric vehicles? Anything around that?
They just mentioned EV generally. Yeah. So
Mm.
that was one of the topics, multifamily housing near the T. That was another thing that was brought up. And I can't remember the third one. They mentioned 3 kind of very high level high arching strategies. So I think that's a great question. I think that would be something that we'd want to hear more about. So again, that's where I think there's a lot of synergy. So I think it's worth bringing them in. So I'll target that for, the next 2 or 3 months, depending on where they're at in their timeline for developing that. So.
Great, thanks.
All right. All right. Well, with that, Amanda, why don't I turn over to you for the director's update? Look at that. I think I bought us a little bit of time there on our agenda.
Great. I'll comment on that. Actually, I was working with the engineering division and planning, and with Aaron Stevens, who's the staff liaison to TAC, on a grant. So it's in the list in my director's update. It's the MAPC technical assistance. And we, in the grant, I sort of, to be honest, put a little bit of the whole kitchen sink in it and said, we want to do all of these things, but would be happy to do a subset, because MAPC looks at what you put in and then they come back to you and say what they will do for this particular grant.
Okay.
But the way that I framed it was a sustainable streets plan. And so it did include EV infrastructure and looking at where it would be, best suited in town. But it also included looking at, we have a complete streets priority list. There's about 150 projects on that list. But there are some obvious projects that aren't on the list. And so there's I think that's where TAC is feeling like maybe a roadmap to implement those 150 different projects is needed. Maybe similar to the solar discussion, we know what we need to do. We just need to figure out how to get it done. And I think financing is probably, like most things, one of the barriers to that. Because I think the complete streets also did identify funding, I want to say, but again, you can only apply often for one project per year. And if there's 150, it's not enough to get it done. So also thinking strategically about how to group them, and happy to talk more about that. So one of the questions.
Can I ask something related to that?
Yeah.
We must have well, and maybe we don't, a capital plan for just street repair, right? With Public Works, I would guess. I don't know if those two are connected at all. Do you have any idea?
So I know that CPW did have like their roads program meeting a few weeks ago. And so I think they do, they put in their capital requests and they're often tailored back. And so,
sure.
But again, so is probably most things that are submitted. And so I think they have a plan and they know what they need to get done, but the funding is what's challenging.
Sure.
So I wanted to report back that I did ask CMLP about the Vineyard Wind agreement. There isn't much of an update right now. The contractual agreements between the developer and then Avangrid Renewables and the IOUs are in process at this time, and the E&E part of the agreement will look similar in the same of terms that were agreed upon with the IOUs, with some minor light plant terms included in the final power purchase agreement. So no real update on what does it exactly mean for Concord, but it's in process. The other question that was brought up last time was related to what's happening at the legislative level at the state level. And so in my update, I provided some detailed updates that we don't have to go through now. It's at the very end of my update, Courtney, if you scroll down. But all of the bills that were in committee needed to be reported out by February 3rd, but many of the bills were asked to have an extension on if they were going to report out favorably from committee. And so the ones that are highlighted are the ones that are in hold. There are 2 that were reported favorably to the TUE, to the Ways and Means. Typically, to my understanding, if a bill makes it out of Ways and Means, it typically goes back to the floor. That's not always the case, but it is a good indication. So the 2 that went forward is one is to allow a local permitting option for all electric buildings and homes, so similar to our home rule petition, but just allowing that across the state. And then the other was the Better Buildings, which I think we've talked about before, but looking at an energy performance standard for different building types, and that we could then create a disclosure requirement. So those are in there. I've created my own sort of tracker, and if you want to do the same, I put a link in the update as well. I think I said there are 123, maybe more acts that if you just Google climate change come up. So there's a lot that is put out there, and there's a lot that you can track. I primarily put ones related to energy and emissions in my tracker for now. But if anyone has others that they're interested in and would like me to add to my list, I'm happy to add them. And on that note, right above this, Courtney, is a new entry. So this new building energy code, there's a straw proposal that was released by DOER. They're taking comments by March 9th. A lot of folks were expecting this to be a net zero code, and it's being called the specialized stretch code. So it does still allow fossil fuel hookups. We're part of the building accelerator program, or building electrification accelerator program, which helped support our home rule petition. And I know that they're planning to put together a letter for communities and residents to sign on to. And when that is put together and I have a chance to review it, I'm happy to send it around to the group. But if you would like to review it on your own, there are several links here and instructions on how to submit a comment if you would like. And one of the main components is they do introduce passive house, and they also reduce the HERS rating. And so there are some good components to it. But if you'd like to dive into that, all of that information is there as well. Michael, you already kind of told folks some good news. We did receive a mass EVIP charger that will go in for, we'll install a DC charger at Rideout Park. We also received the Green Communities grant, and that will be for air source heat pumps at the pods at the Ripley Elementary School. So a couple of good news items there. And then I wanted to let the committee know that I am going to be out for 2 weeks in April. It's the first 2 full weeks in April. So I'll be working hard in March to get everything ready and progress. So I will be back for our April meeting. But if you need something during those 2 weeks, let's try to touch base in early March and make a plan for getting things done before then. And I'll pause there and see if there are any questions on any other items that were in the report.
And Jake.
I just, I may have missed this, but I thought that the state had kind of agreed to adopt basically a net zero stretch code. So is this kind of the continuing iteration of that initial proposal? The opt-in specialized stretch code, or is this a different piece?
I think DOER's intention was that this would be meeting that requirement. But in the conversations that I've seen, I think a lot of people have the same question as you, Jake, is that it's not actually a net zero code. It asks for everything to be electric ready, but it doesn't go as far as requiring that it be net zero.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. That's helpful. I know, didn't we, I think, pretty sure we drafted some supportive comments or chimed in to some other comments. So we may want to consider if as a town, we want to provide any feedback. I don't know how that works with this or whether, but just something to think about if we feel like there needs to be some elements of this strengthened or going back to what was originally proposed.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
would-
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Part of, I asked Deputy Kay Hodges about us writing a letter, and she was happy for me to draft something and provide it to the town manager for her to review or to provide to the select board to review. But when talking with the BEA, like RMI group of advocates working on this, they seem to think that a joint letter with many signatures would be stronger. And so once I have that, I'm happy to share it around and get feedback. And Michael, maybe you know, because I know Alice is really involved in the BEA.
Yeah, I know she's been keeping me posted a little bit on what BEA is doing. It's hard to keep up with 27 cities and towns, and everybody's throwing emails in and out. But the getting at the simplicity of, or not the simplicity, but the takeaway, I guess, a minute for the draft stretch code is the prime concern, large concern, the fact that the language permits in presumably certain circumstances. I don't know why a designer would include fossil fuels, but apparently there are a few that feel that we still need fossil fuels. Is that the prime concern about that language? And what we need to do as a collective body is to figure out how to eliminate that part of the draft? Or is there anything else that even comes up to that level of concern?
That seems to be the largest concern that I've seen and heard in the conversations that I've been in. I think, to my understanding, the home rule petition and the statewide legislation were partially contingency plans, if you will, to the stretch code pushing to be net zero. And so for me, the fact that it doesn't really mirror what many of the communities have been asking for is where that a major disconnect comes in.
Thanks.
The last thing I'll highlight, if you haven't had a chance to go through the director's update, is that at the very end, I do have some metrics. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it today. And especially if people have a chance to look at it before the next meeting, happy to dive into it a little bit more. But these are the metrics that I've gotten back from different departments. Some of them, especially if they're emissions related, would require that we do a 2020 greenhouse gas inventory. And John, you had made a comment a few meetings ago that a lot of the data isn't there to do a comprehensive update. And I feel the same when I started to look at it. If the board feels strongly that we do need to do a 2020 update, I'm happy to look into that further. But it does feel like a lot of the data hasn't really changed since the last time that we've done it, or that it's fairly challenging to get the data to begin with.
No, this is
So
great.
there's a lot of numbers in there.
Yeah.
So maybe the best course of action might be to have folks digest it, and then we can go more in depth at our next meeting.
I think that sounds like a good plan. I would like to digest it a little bit more and just look at it. I've been looking at it while we've been talking a little bit, but let's put that on our next agenda so that we can, I mean, don't have to spend a ton of time, but I think dig into it and then just, revisit the question of a footprint or not, once we see what you've been able to put together so far. But this is good. I like the tie back to the main categories too. I think that's going to be helpful in proceeding.
I think it's really useful to have multiple indicators, since
Mhm.
we can't really reduce everything down to total greenhouse gas emissions.
Right.
At least we can see key indicators and have a sense of, how things are going.
Yep. Agree.
Oh, and I just saw some of them crossed out. So you will see, when I asked for data, there wasn't data consistency in the data that we have available for today, or even looking back, there was some data that I wasn't able to place where that number was coming from, or other departments weren't able to find it. And so some of them, that's why they're crossed out, is to show where sort of the current numbers I'm available to find didn't match what was in the plan. So also happy to cover any questions related to that. But
One thing that would be helpful, Amanda, if it's possible, is to provide some contextual data. So like, you have numbers on how many buildings have installed heat pumps, right? But like I don't actually know how many buildings we have in Concord. And so, if we have, I don't forget what the number was, but if we have a few hundred buildings that have heat pumps, but we have, 2,000 buildings, then it gives us a sense of how far along we are or aren't. And some similar numbers, like how many vehicles are registered in Concord. If that data is relatively easy to get.
Yeah, understanding the baseline, the
Because
inventory, right?
one hand you could say, oh, well, the number of heat pump installations is going up well, but it doesn't tell you like how big the task really is. So.
That's a good point, John. All right, and I had one question, if there are no other questions from other CAB members or Jerry. If we have anybody else still on the call, but Brian. So I love the compost. I think that's awesome. And when can we do it townwide? That's my question. What is your thought, I guess, with the pilot, and what's sort of the next steps that you're looking at?
Yeah, so we townwide, as in like a curbside pickup townwide, or yeah, I think it's on CPW's radar on the environmental solid waste services, and she has switched back over to water. And so now I think that there's a little bit of transition there. Things might slow down on that. I know in the last year they were working on their recycling contract, and then they were going to move into the evaluation of providing compost on curbside pickup. And so I think it's on their radar. I think it's still in development. And what this pilot project for me is fulfilling is that it's harder for folks in larger, like multi-unit homes to do the private curbside that's offered. And so this is an opportunity for people that either don't want to pay for their own private vendor, or they live in a building where it's not possible. They'll be able to use these drop-off location sites. And I looked today and we're up to 94, 96. So it's still readily increasing,
Good.
even from the week before.
Good.
And they're not full yet. I went and checked. They get picked up on Tuesday. I checked them early Tuesday morning. So if you haven't signed up and you want to participate, there's plenty of room in the bin still. Which is something that I did some promotion, but I wouldn't say I've gone all out because I wasn't sure what capacity we would have. And so I'm doing a few weeks of monitoring to see, do we need another bin? Do we have more room in the bin to promote it more? So it is truly a pilot, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So the
Do you know where the compost is going?
So I think they have a site in Gloucester, and then they do sell the soil. So we use Black Earth Compost, if any of you use that, and they do have information about their process online if you'd like to read more about it.
I just a quick note, I signed up for Black Earth Compost right before I think this program was launched, and they shared, as part of the sign up, they shared some interesting information on like the number of people in Concord who are participating, and it was pretty significant. It was like hundreds and hundreds of people. And then they had like even a calculator tool. So I thought they did a nice job of providing that information. I don't know if it's something they share with the town as well. It'd be nice, feed into the sustainability reporting and stuff like that. So,
you know,
Yeah.
did they mention, because when I signed up, I did it 2 or 3 years ago, and we didn't have very many households. And so there's a breaking point that if we get a certain number but it has to be with one vendor, obviously, that they will discount all customers. I know Arlington has hit that now. Of course, Arlington's much bigger, but do you happen to know if they mentioned that? Or
they said that we had qualified for some discount. I don't know if it's, it must be probably tiered. So I don't know what that discount is. But yeah, I think I took a screenshot of it or something, but I think it's on my other computer. So if I have it, I can send it around just as an FYI.
I mean, even if it's, even if we're not yet at the point where we can get it offered curbside for everyone, if we can figure out ways to get the information out there, there might be a lot of people that would do it on their own. If there's, incentive cost-wise, I guess. But I like that you're doing it, and so I just wanted to say, keep it up, and I'm curious to see what the outcomes are, and next steps. So let's see. And the other thing you mentioned,
I think there's the last
go
that
ahead.
I saw, Black Earth has 300. I was just gonna say, I think the last time I saw Black Earth Compost has 380 customers in town.
Great.
And I want to say that their threshold is maybe 250 or 300. So I think we are above that.
Okay.
And I did some research on the private vendors that are available in town, so we could list them on the website. So we're not recommending anyone, and happy to add anyone if we miss them.
Right.
But that information is on the town website now. So if people don't feel like it's feasible to participate in the drop off, and they do, or it's easier, to pay for their own service, that information is hopefully now more accessible than it was before.
Good, great. Yeah, that's increased definitely from when I started. I think we're like 100-ish, maybe a little bit more. So that's good to hear. Great. All right. Any other comments or questions for Amanda on her report? Great report, very thorough. Thanks again for putting all of it in there. But am I missing anyone? Oh, don't see any hands. Welcome, Matt. So you joined?
Hi, sorry I'm late.
That's fine. That's no worries. I just can't see everyone when I'm sharing my screen, so I had to scroll through to find everyone.
Yep, I was at a public forum earlier today and then until 6 and then
Perfect. Nope, that's fine.
had to eat something.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right, well, we're still following the agenda, but we're a little bit off on our timing, and that's okay. You know, before we move into the work plan, Amanda and I did work a little bit on a process document for the committee. So this was, if you remember, the impetus for this was really the election process, and then realized that we didn't really have something that we could point to that kind of discussed some of the process related to CAB. And CAB's a relatively new group, I think. I can't recall the exact date. Was it 2018 that it was started? But in that time, it hadn't we hadn't developed a sort of something to guide our process in terms of how commitments are made to the board and elections of chair and vice chair and all of that. So Amanda took a first stab at it, and I threw in some other comments and information. And so it is at the end of the packet for this month's meeting. I don't know, if you all got a chance to take a look at it, but I would like to open the floor up to, any comments or questions, additions that you think would be helpful that aren't in there currently, as it says, it's still in draft. So we are open to feedback and would like to hear from CAB on that. Anyone has any comments? Just while you're looking, I get the sense that maybe you all are looking at it, and that's okay. So we did talk about, kind of highlighting the timelines that are significant for CAB. So we, included town budget process, CMLP budget process, and then the significant town meeting milestones, annual report, which we did put out. Amanda was a big part of that in January with Jake's input. Certainly, if there's any other timelines to get in here, I think it'd be useful. We did include this process around electing a chair or vice chair. This really came out of our conversation in the last meeting, but would like to get CAB thoughts there. Filling a vacant board seat, and then some expectations of and duties, around chair, vice chair, and then rotating clerk. And then finally, term limits. And this we're still working on, which I think will fold in some of the metrics as we start to formalize those a little bit more. So goes back to the conversation we were just having related to metrics, but how are we updating both internally the CAB as well as externally town staff and select board on our Sustainable Concord project. So we see that as being helpful, probably more just as we mentioned here, timing rather than the metrics themselves, but any major items that we're missing or any comments from the board?
Thought it was very complete and helpful to see it in writing.
Okay, good. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I agree. It was good. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll keep working on it. Kind of fill in these other items and bring it back to the board, for sort of final approval. Maybe what I'll do is make sure we give, a month ahead of time so that we take a look at the next draft and then we plan to approve it the following month, just to give you all a chance to review it again. All right, well, with that, I think we can move on. I'll go back up to the top. All right, so we wanted to just, as we mentioned, we wanted to give a chance, probably each meeting, to do a quick check-in, and these, maybe at times longer or shorter, depending. I think we were able to get a couple of work plans filled in, and I confess I don't have them up right the moment. Let me see if I can pull them up while we're talking. Yeah, I think a couple of folks were able to at least take a first stab at it. I will confess I did not, so don't follow my lead and example. First, was the template helpful, or is there any, for those of you that were able to sort of populate a little bit, was there anything that you felt needed to be added? Because we can add that, into the template, if that's helpful. Anything there that we missed?
Yeah, this is Jake. I'll just say I'm on here, but I didn't submit anything, but I have a very rough start. And that my only feedback on the template, I think it's a good start. I think it's can be a little harder to work in Excel in terms of, writing stuff out, but
Okay.
it's not a big deal. I don't
Okay.
think it. So, and I think it's helpful to kind of think through it and make sure we're all laying out kind of what we think we need to do and when, and kind of walking through that process. So thank you for setting it up.
Great.
This is Warren. I generally found it helpful as well. There are maybe ways in which it could be refined or changed, but I don't have any specific suggestions. And, I think it's fine for the moment. And I just encourage us to use it for a while. And then we could see if we want to make any changes to it later on.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. All right. So I know Warren was able to start, start filling in his related to financing. And I think I saw one from Paul and or John, or combination of the two, at least to start. Any questions come up, or any, thing you want to highlight there, need for more information, or, any way that our group can help to move you along, or is it more just a matter of finding the time to sit down and do it? Which is my excuse, I will admit.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, it's mainly around finding the time and carving it out and being able to work through it. And then I think more importantly, just following through and having the conversations that you need to have to really flesh out kind of something that you can bring back to CAB to review and discuss and kind of get feedback and then refine and get it to a place where we know where the group feels informed and where we can kind of make a decision about what direction we want to head in on each of these elements. So each area may have a different strategy that we want to take, and so I think it's really important to have for the team to have the context and to do the upfront work, and it just takes some time. So It looks like Amanda may have, her video may have dropped and I see her hands up. So I just wanted.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Amanda.
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I keep cutting out with my video on. But not to put folks on the spot, but I know that Warren and Michael have done some outreach and some research and we've chatted. And so maybe we could give an update on what we have found out. And then also Paul and John have been meeting with folks and I think have an update. So even if we don't have time to walk through the work plans, maybe we could just give a brief summary
update.
of
It's a great
each
idea.
of those.
Yeah, if you're willing to, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm certainly willing. Warren and I have been chatting a little bit back and forth, thinking
Good.
about the whole idea of the financing. I was personally curious about what Holyoke Gas and Electric was doing, since they seem to have had, if not a revolving loan fund, they seem to have had an energy conservation fund that's been in play for a little bit. So I reached out to them and was able to finally to track down Kate Sullivan, who is the project manager. And we haven't had a chance to go through it in any level of detail, but I wrote up a survey instrument and trying to get at, well, what is it we'd like to know? You know, what would be helpful to us as we sort of plan this? And, you know, things around what the structure that they're using, how is it administrated, what kind of budgets were there? I was personally curious about how they sourced the funding and how they dealt with things that I know from experience has often been a serious roadblock for developing these kinds of funds, is the calculating the default rate on loans that are issued and how they were managing that. And then also personally curious about, if we go down this pathway, it's a huge amount of work. I mean, it's a very, I know from experience, getting involved in that kind of level of financial analysis is a big deal. So we would want to have confidence that is if we went there, it seems to me as the CAB and decided to do it collectively, is the scale there, is the speed of adoption, how long would it might take us to do something like this? And the level of collaboration that I think would be necessary if we went down this way. So it's in it's a little bit of infancy, I think, but it's starting to. I think we have an opportunity from someone of our peer group, right, in our town, as a municipal, who has tried this, and so we'll see. It'd be helpful to get those insights. I don't know, Warren, if you want to add on to that, but that's kind of where we're at right now, a little bit.
And before Warren, before you answer, if I could just make sure, I understand it. So what Holyoke Gas and Electric offer is a revolving loan fund for their customers who want to implement a renewable or some sort of energy technology that would get them towards less emissions. They have this fund that you can tap into. Is that the way you understand it?
Yes, it's primarily focusing on energy efficiency.
Okay.
Almost entirely, but there is,
Okay.
they sent out, in the research I did, I was able to find a little bit about the architecture of what they had. They do offer an opportunity for customers to look at their heating systems and to think about going from a fossil fuel system to air source heat pumps. Doesn't say anything about geothermal, but they mention about air source heat pumps.
Okay.
And it has some of the, I think, a 5-year term, and the maximum, I believe, is around $10,000 for qualified customers.
Okay.
But
Great.
the real metrics, I don't think we know, which is, the level of activity, the number of loans they've issued, how did it relate to their goals with respect to, greenhouse gas reductions and things like that.
I'm just going to share this list of questions that you had shared with a couple of us. Let's see.
Yeah, and if that, and
You can
looking at
see
that,
that.
as I've reached out, if anyone has additional questions that maybe the survey instrument would benefit from, by all means.
Yeah, so this is a question, these are the set of questions that Michael and Warren had come up with, and I think Amanda added
Well,
to.
not me. I
Not
will
you.
claim any credit for this. It's really Michael and
But
Amanda's
Warren
work.
was the inspiration.
Oh, there you go. There you go. All right. But Warren, anything to add?
No, other than I'm really appreciative that Michael's doing this. And it would be good to learn more about what Holyoke has done and how they did it.
Yeah, great. Great. All right. Any questions for Michael and Warren?
I don't have a question for Michael and Warren. I just wanted to let you know, something is going on with my laptop and that the extension charging thing isn't working and it's about to
Okay.
die. So I might have to transition to my
Okay.
phone. So
Okay,
if I
okay, fair.
get dropped, I don't know what's going on. I can't fix it. So
Just
Okay, well,
until you're
thanks for
bored
the
with the
heads up.
conversation.
but I'm very excited about the research that's been done and the direction you guys are going in. So thank you, but just a heads up. if I
Yep,
don't.
no, appreciate that. Appreciate that. All right. Paul and John, do you want to give a quick update? And I'll stop sharing, but if anybody does have additional questions, I think, if you want to send them to Amanda, copy Michael and Warren.
I might
forward to
add before we go to Paul and John,
Oh, sure.
Warren isn't taking credit for
Oh,
a
no.
meeting that we did have with Abode, and they pointed us in some good direction. So Warren is doing some research on Slipstream and seeing what kind of services they might provide. I also had a call with E&E today to hear about what they're thinking about on the loan program side of things. And so I think we're making progress. And the goal is to put together like a pro-con matrix of these different options to
Great.
support CMLP and thinking through how they might move forward.
Good.
Great.
Well, look, since you raised that, let me pile on that I have been doing something here. It just wasn't with what Michael was doing. And where I'm coming at this, the town may ultimately need several different financing models and several different loan programs. But I think there's a reason for us to start with some of the easy possibilities. And from the discussion Amanda and I had with Abode, there are two potentially good options that maybe could be implemented relatively quickly using on-bill financing. One involves funding from MWEC, and it turns out that Belmont, even though they're not an MWEC member, they've been participating in it. And then the other is, as Amanda said, a company, Slipstream, is offering financing for the residential market, but they would require on-bill financing. And it may be something that could be done without too much heavy lifting. There are concerns about how things like defaults would be handled, and would the light plant be taking on too much financial risk by setting up such a program if people stop paying back their loans? I reached out to a group my organization's worked with in the past, EESI in Washington, the Energy and Environmental Study Institute. They do a lot of work on-bill financing to find out if they've done any work in Massachusetts, but just to talk about how small municipal utilities and rural electric co-ops in other parts of the country structure on-bill financing so that they're not taking on excessive financial risk. So we'll find out, but it seems quite promising that something could be done here without too much, wouldn't happen overnight, but it potentially could be done without too much difficulty.
Great. I think that makes a lot of sense to try to focus on the low hanging fruit first, and then.
I think
Or-
Jake had his hand up, but he put it down. He became shy.
I just did the thumbs up. I'm
Thumbs
being
up,
very
I think he's
active with
in
my
agreement.
comments tonight.
Are you gonna look at the PACE program, which I think the town opted into, to see
Well,
if
the
there's,
thing with PACE, the town has opted into PACE commercial,
you
not
know,
PACE residential. If, my understanding is my charge is to look at financing for residences. And, PACE residential has been done in different parts of the country, but there've been a number of consumer protection issues raised with it that have been more of a problem than with PACE commercial.
right, but it applies to 5+ unit residential.
So that's a good point. Yeah, so well, I guess we should look into that too. About big residents.
I mean, there've only been 2 deals in the state so far, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Paul and John, do you want to give a quick highlight from, what you've looked at so far?
You want me to do it, Paul?
Yeah, why don't you do it, John, because I'm really just supporting you.
Well, John is retired now, so it's all this time,
You've got
right?
all this
That's right.
time now, John. and I think you should be
That's right.
picking up these tasks. Come on.
That's right. I'm slacking off now. I don't
Yeah,
have any
yeah.
excuses. Well, so I think, the gist of the action is around developing a recommendation to the town about doing a robust vulnerability assessment and getting for the town to get into the mode of planning with future climate projections rather than historic parameters. So I think maybe the next step on that is basically to draft a recommendation, with Paul and Amanda to bring to the committee. And so I think that task is be relatively easy, but I guess to show that these things are not always linear. Amanda already has us working on on project to try to develop a regional flood model so we better understand what our future flood risks are with changes in precipitation, which really needs to happen at sort of the watershed scale. And of course, this is something Paul knows, all about as a hydrologist. And so I'll let them update the group on where that stands.
So yeah, Paul, any update on the MVP EOI?
So I'm going to put together a worksheet on supporting the watershed model for the Suasco River Basin. And Amanda should really fill this in, but we've had a couple of conversations with some other people in the watershed. And it looks like we're thinking of putting together a regional watershed model to initially look at flooding issues throughout the watershed, but also design the watershed so that there are enough sub-basins in Concord. It can also be used to look at some of the stormwater management issues, at least for the major drainage issues.
Good.
And then this same model can also be used for looking at drought management, which is also another major climate threat we're facing. And this model also has a component which that lets you understand what's going on with groundwater as well, which is very important to the town, as
Right.
well as surface water. And then also this type of model can be expanded to look at some water quality issues, which is also of a concern to the town. So I think they're thinking now of a 2 or 3 year project.
Great.
So I think it'd be quite beneficial to the town to look at these issues, and then management strategies like for flooding and drought and water quality management, they could be developed basin wide, because that's how it's going to have to be done.
And how many communities have you been able to reach out to in Suasco at this point, or showing
Amanda
interest?
Amanda knows.
Yeah, so we've been working with ORS because
Okay.
they were working with the town of Stowe to develop a Suasco Climate Resilience Coalition using some funding from MAPC, and then they also got some funding from, I think, 495 Metro West Foundation to support basically coordinating the Suasco watersheds for the next few years. So there was a meeting of all the watershed participants in January. And I attended that, and was some interest from some of the communities in participating in the model, and others, didn't show interest, but they didn't show disinterest. And so no one was sort of waving their hand saying, like, I don't think this is the project that we should move forward with regionally. I know that the coalition asked for like a letter of commitment from all of the communities to participate in the coalition. And they were collecting that. And so for me, I feel like we will be looking to ORS and to Stowe to help us organize the different communities, given that they are already playing that role, and that perhaps what we can do is provide more of the technical role in putting together an application and being sort of the management on the project side of things.
Okay. Any questions for Paul or John on either of those initiatives? And we'll check back in, obviously, but those are some really good first steps. All right.
I'll just say, I'm glad this work's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Great. All right. Well, we'll keep hearing updates on that. I know that you're still looking at the MVP as a potential funding mechanism, right, for that work?
Yeah, and we have our EOI meeting, or expression of interest meeting, coming up at the end of February.
Okay.
And MVP is having a pre-RFR meeting in early March, I think March 7th. And so I'll plan to attend that, which I think will give us an indication of potential timeline and funding availability. So by the next meeting, I'll have an update on the logistical side of things, I hope.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So we will check back in on these again. Like mentioned, we'll keep this as sort of a standing agenda item, and try to just keep things rolling. Jake and I will be up for updates the next time on the other two. Let's see, warrant, next item on the agenda, warrant article review. I think the warrant article just, correct me if I'm wrong, just dropped a couple of days ago. I'm trying to see if this is dated. But I can share my screen. I do have it up. I don't expect that we're going to be able to talk through it in great detail. If you had a chance to take a look at it, I can't actually share my screen. I can't talk and function on Zoom at the same time. But if you've had a chance, great. I would love for any comments. Whoops, I did highlight the Article 38 that Dean was talking to us about earlier as one that maybe want to discuss further. And understand, I think we'll table that till our next meeting. But what support we can provide there. I don't know if anybody has had a chance to look through and there's anything that jumped out at you as other articles that we should be digging into a little bit further. I see here's the, the Thoreau Business District, the planning board article. We've talked about that one in the past, in past meetings. And whether we need to dig into that a little bit further to understand if there's potential climate benefit. I think we generally agreed there was. Any others that anyone that jumped out to anyone?
Yeah, I just looked at 15.
Yeah.
And I literally, I didn't get a chance to look at this before, but it sounds like it's ties right into the financing mechanisms, and I think really interesting to understand how that's kind of envisioned to be structured. And yeah, I think it's definitely one we should talk more about.
Okay. Michael.
Yeah, just building on that, it talks about an electrification trust that would, I guess, be sourced by charitable donations, as I understand it. I don't know, what's that about? Is it the idea of somebody in
Yeah,
town decides to put
I can maybe-
$100,000? Yeah, Amanda, maybe you
Yeah,
have
I can
some
maybe
more on
chime
that.
in.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is, Michael. So there have been several requests, to my understanding, about donating funding to the town for different purposes, whether that's to purchase electric vehicles or chargers, or to do other things in town. And so I'm thinking through a way of how, we could establish a place for that to occur and to set up a mechanism for that to happen. That's a little bit easier to do.
Yeah. It'd be nice if someone were putting in $5 million for a loan trust, and then we can build a comprehensive plan.
Love it.
The revolving fund,
Revolving
loan
loan
funds
fund,
come
there's
right
our
out of
source.
there, right? Yeah.
That's how we source it.
Excellent. Excellent. Any others? I think, Amanda, you did have your hand up, but maybe it was to answer that question.
Yeah, it was.
Right. Okay, I'm just highlighting the ones that I think might be worth more conversation in our next meeting. Does anyone know, has anyone looked at 35? I don't know if that has any implication or not. Well, maybe I'll try to take a look at these, especially related to planning and the sustainable development initiative. So look at those and bring that back. Okay.
I'll also say the Assabet River number 25 is also looking at MVP as potential funding. They have an EOI meeting set up as well. This project is a parcel right next to the Assabet. Partially, some of it would be put into conserved lands, in particular the floodplain. And then there would be remaining land that's not in the floodplain that could be used for affordable housing. So it's a pretty interesting project. But again, wanted to highlight it since they're also going for an MVP potentially. But they're looking at several different grants, so it'll need to be determined which one is really the best fit.
Okay.
And the checkout bag fee, I assume that's to have some kind of fee imposed when people ask for paper bags at the store. I mean, potentially has certainly some small emissions reduction benefit.
Okay. And then these, I know there's some talk about and I don't know if it, I'd have to think about how it relates to our climate plan, but the reformatory branch trail, talking about different options for paving that. I think that's the one. There was some discussion of that. So we'll look at that one too, just to see. Okay. Good. Well, in the interest of time, I think we'll move on. I'm going to make sure we have time for public comment. Let's see. A question. One other thing that I think I would like to add to our agenda, but maybe we'll table it till the next meeting, and that would actually give Jerry and I a chance to maybe talk about this further. But there have been a couple of different proposals related to the town developing an award or some sort of recognition for citizens, I believe citizens that, and or businesses potentially that are taking sustainable measures, and really as a way to promote those efforts in town. I know, and I'll just offer quickly anecdotally that it's something that a committee that I ran for a number of years through our wastewater related organization that we did, and we're now in our third year of awarding it, and it's taken a little bit of time for the award to take off, for anybody to, one, know about it, and two, actually put their name in the hat to be nominated. But this year, the third year, we had actually 3 different projects that were nominated. So we had something to choose from. But I do think it's been a great way for that organization to highlight, what does it mean to be a sustainable project, and what does it mean to do sustainable infrastructure in, because I think that can still be somewhat nebulous, maybe less so on the, the citizen level, but so it might be just again a way to keep highlighting and promoting, the work of particularly CAB and CSEC. So I think it's something that I'd like us to discuss more, and whether CAB and or CSEC do something like that in the future. But in the interest of time, I'll just see if we still have anyone from I guess, Jerry, you're the public at this point, so and Matt, I guess.
I'm good. Nothing more to add.
Nothing more to add. Okay. All right. Matt, how about you? Anything?
I assume Amanda talked about our testimony that we did together, so I think that was the only
You
update I
did.
had.
No, why don't you?
We didn't hear that, Matt. Tell us more.
Oh, well, we got to testify at a hearing about the fossil fuel, infrastructure request that we've got in front of the legislature, trying to move that ahead. So, our local option, but we also, Amanda spoke to the other opportunity where you could just have towns opt into a statewide option. So that we just spoke at the hearing, and we'll have to see where it goes. I think it's still in committee. Am I right, Amanda?
Yeah, you're right, Matt. It's it was on the extension list that they asked for some more time to report out.
Yeah.
And I was happy that we didn't get asked any tough questions. Some of the following speakers did. So we made it out clear.
And see, it's funny because I had to race back off to work, and we were very fortunate to be the first called. So I mean, it's both bad and good, but it was great as far as I was concerned. Before anybody could think of any questions, I was done.
That's great.
And I guess I was trying to think. Oh shoot, there was also something else related to that. With the fossil fuel. Oh, well, it was just that the state has issued this draft, stretch code. And I just was curious, is this, is the Climate Action Advisory Board going to take a look at it?
So we did talk about that.
Yeah, we talked about
Okay,
that.
sorry, I missed that.
That's okay, before you jumped on, and I think, Amanda had even brought it to my attention before we put the packet out for the meeting, and wondered if, we wanted to discuss CAB, particularly commenting, but I think it sounded like, Amanda, you had a couple of conversations then subsequent to that, and it felt like the RMI group was really recommending that a broader response with that, through that RMI collective, be the way to go. It's, would
Rather than
gather
our
lots more
groups.
signatures,
Okay.
and more towns, right? Or more towns and municipalities have bigger, broader support. So I think that's where we were headed, is that Amanda was going to share that once she got the response from that group.
Okay, and I haven't had a chance to review it and see whether it's generally good news or not good news. There's always been lots of concern about what they would actually put down in black and white. So
Yeah, I think that the one thing that so far had come out was that it looked to be a little bit of a step back from where we were hoping it
that
was.
was the fear.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
it didn't quite go all the way. But and remind me, Amanda, I think you said that, even as citizens, we can offer comments. So she provided that in her director's report. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Good comments. All right. Well, with that, before we do adjourn, any comments from CAB related to anything that we've discussed and didn't get a chance to make comment on before?
I had one question. Maybe others know, and Brian Folds probably knows, but I would like to not that has to be answered tonight, but I'm interested to understand what the state of our electric distribution system is and its capacity to handle full electrification, because it's becoming an issue in the city. So we're having discussions about that because, anecdotally you hear of people who have not been able to move ahead with installing heat pumps because their service to their building is insufficient.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole peak load thing. I don't know what the situation is here. Maybe
we have a problem. No,
yeah, okay.
We definitely have a problem. Half of our network has a problem. Yeah.
Right. So obviously that has to be addressed as well, right? Because we can set a bunch of goals, but if the system can't handle it, then it's not going to happen. So I don't know that if and maybe this goes in part to the solar article in terms of looking at the benefits of solar for managing peak demand. But part of that study, maybe hopefully would also look at, well, what needs to happen to the distribution system, or maybe the light plant's already working on it. I don't know, but
Jerry has his hand up. Maybe, do you have something to add to that, Jerry?
Yeah, I do briefly. I spoke about this related issue with Dave Wood a few weeks ago. It was a brief conversation. My question to him was he concerned at all with the impact of EV charging on the distribution network, the very local distribution network? And by very local, I mean neighborhood level, street level. And he said, yeah, they're aware that's an issue. They're concerned about it, but they haven't done anything yet. So I think, I don't know this because I haven't looked into it deeply, but I'm pretty sure there is a looming issue here. The time frame of that issue, I don't know. But, for example, if everyone on your block gets an EV, with a substantial battery size, and everyone wants to charge it off peak at night, it's likely there's an issue there. So
Right.
in short, I think this is something worth watching. I wouldn't suggest it pops to the top of the list right now, but it is an issue worth watching.
Right. Well, and you're at, well, we're hoping everyone will be converting to EVs over time, and as well as electrifying their buildings, right? So it seems like it'd be worth having a discussion at some point about how to float the issue and figure out as a town how to address it. I mean, it's a long-term problem, I think, but it has to be part of the mix, I think.
Right. And, kind of leveraging some of Dean's comments, I think it'd be a good idea to get ahead of this, to kind of understand what the implications are as we drive, head forth on, full electrification. Because if we need to change our distribution network somehow, that's likely to be very costly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we're talking lots of infrastructure here.
Yeah.
There seems to be so many of these issues that we keep coming around to that ultimately nest back with the municipal light plant. Wouldn't it be great if we could fashion a better relationship? Not that we have any answers. I mean, I certainly don't know how we would deal with a rapid escalation of 25% of the town electrifying and doing exactly what we want, right? Moving to air source heat pumps, where all of a sudden we see a 30% increase in people purchasing electric vehicles, or for that matter, the duck curve. How do we deal with, the peak and off peak? Just there's so many of those issues, and many of them impact the priorities that CAB has set in the blueprints, right? And
right. So how do we
meld
come
that a
together
little
on
bit
that?
better? How do we
go
in, not necessarily we have all the answers, but I think we know that this is a planning process, right? It's taking each one of these pieces, and how does that fit into the full fabric of what the municipal light plant as our energy delivery company has within their strategic plan, right? All of us are kind of looking in from the sidelines, looking through the window, and we know a little bit about individual pieces, but there doesn't appear to be at this point, and maybe it's the immaturity of where we are in time, that a deeper strategic understanding of how we take each one of these pieces and get confidence that it builds up into ultimately Article 51 that says that this is where we're going to be in 30 and 50. And even the light board doesn't, seems to struggle a little bit with that, creating that kind of catalyst about cooperation, collaboration, and operations planning.
It seems like the thing we could do is to start to articulate a systems approach to this problem instead of looking at each piece individually, because we could have the greatest, building or vehicle electrification program, but if the distribution system can't handle it, it's not going to happen.
Right. It's complicated.
I was just going to add, I think we're probably due to have another kind of conversation with the light plan. And I think this is all part of, in my opinion, what should be in a strategic plan. And we talked earlier about kind of that still being in the works and not really having an updated plan. So, maybe this is an opportunity for us to kind of raise these kinds of issues, whether it's solar or the distribution, storage with them, and really, have that dialogue and re-engage, because I think it's been a while. So anyway.
Yeah, good comment. That's kind of what I was thinking as well. So let's table that, but not forget about it. We'll come back to that probably at our next meeting, and maybe even have a little bit longer conversation. With that, we're a little over time, not too bad, but I think we got to talk about a lot of different things tonight, and I appreciate your attention to each of those. So I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
All right.
John gets it. He's
All
in
right.
there now.
All right. Anyone second that?